In the suburban enclave of Maple Grove, where picket fences and trimmed hedges defined the landscape, lived Tom, a single father in his early 40s with a knack for carpentry and a deep devotion to his 8-year-old son Ethan. Their modest ranch-style home sat on a corner lot, its backyard dominated by a sturdy oak tree that had stood for decades. 2 summers ago, Tom had transformed that oak into a haven for Ethan, building a treehouse with a pitched roof, rope ladder, and a tiny porch overlooking the yard. Painted in earthy greens to blend with the foliage, it was a labor of love, crafted during late evenings after his shifts at a local hardware store. Ethan spent hours there reading comic books, playing pirates, or sketching the birds that nested nearby. Neighbors often waved at the sight, their kids begging to join the fun. The treehouse was a slice of childhood magic, unassuming yet cherished until the Maple Grove HOA decided it had to go. The HOA was a formidable presence, its board led by Cynthia, a woman in her late 50s whose meticulous nature bordered on obsession. Known for her clipboard patrols and penchant for issuing fines, Cynthia ruled with an iron grip, citing bylaws that seemed to multiply overnight. She had once fined a family for a basketball hoop deemed too bright, and another for a garden gnome she called offensive to community standards. Tom had steered clear of her radar, paying dues promptly and keeping his lawn pristine. But one humid July morning, as he sipped coffee on his patio, he spotted Cynthia striding across his lawn, her eyes locked on the treehouse. She carried a measuring tape and a notepad, her lips pursed as she scribbled furiously. Without preamble, she informed Tom that the treehouse violated HOA regulations, specifically Section 3.7, which prohibited non-permanent structures exceeding a certain height without prior approval. She declared it an eyesore, claiming it disrupted the neighborhood's cohesive aesthetic and could lower property values. By noon, an official notice arrived in Tom's mailbox, demanding the treehouse's removal within 10 days or face a $75 daily fine. Ethan, unaware of the brewing storm, swung on the rope ladder, his laughter echoing as Tom read the letter again, disbelief turning to frustration. The treehouse met all local building codes. Tom had checked with the city before starting the project, and was barely visible from the street, nestled behind the oak's thick branches. Cynthia's complaint felt personal, a power play rooted in her need for control. Tom considered appealing, but the HOA's process was a labyrinth of forms and hearings, designed to exhaust dissenters. Neighbors had warned him about Cynthia's tactics, sharing stories of battles lost over minor infractions. Yet, Tom wasn't one to back down. Ethan loved that treehouse, and tearing it down would break his son's heart. That evening, as fireflies blinked in the twilight, Tom sat on the porch, staring at the oak. Ethan climbed into the treehouse, oblivious to the threat, his flashlight beam dancing through the leaves. Tom's mind churned with options. He could dismantle the structure quietly, sparing Ethan the truth, but the thought of capitulating to Cynthia's whims ignited a spark of defiance. He began researching the HOA bylaws, poring over dense paragraphs on his laptop. A clause caught his eye: community approval could override certain restrictions if enough residents petitioned. It was a long shot, but it planted a seed. Why not rebuild the treehouse in a way that complied with the rules yet made a bold statement? Better yet, why not expose Cynthia's overreach and rally the neighborhood? Over the next few days, tension simmered in Maple Grove. Cynthia's SUV rolled by Tom's house daily, her gaze fixed on the treehouse as if willing it to vanish. Neighbors whispered about the notice, some offering sympathy, others too wary of Cynthia's wrath to speak up. Tom started discreetly canvassing, knocking on doors after work to gauge support. Many shared his frustration, recounting their own run-ins with the HOA. Fines for unapproved mailboxes, bans on holiday lights, or demands to repaint non-compliant shutters. A few agreed to sign a petition if Tom organized one, emboldened by his willingness to challenge the status quo. Using his carpentry skills, Tom sketched plans for a new treehouse, one that would adhere to every bylaw while pushing the boundaries of creativity. He ordered materials: cedar planks, weatherproof paint, and a custom slide, all within the HOA's height and material restrictions. He also designed a set of posters to drum up support, each featuring a photo of Ethan's treehouse with the caption, "Save our kids' dreams, stop overreach." He printed them at a local shop, planning to distribute them at the upcoming HOA meeting. The deadline loomed, and Cynthia sent a follow-up email, her tone sharp, warning of escalated fines if the treehouse remained. Tom decided to act before the deadline. On the 9th day, he hosted a small gathering in his backyard, inviting neighbors for lemonade and a treehouse farewell. About 20 showed up, their kids clambering up the ladder while adults swapped stories of Cynthia's nitpicking. Tom passed around his posters and a petition, collecting signatures under the oak's shade. Cynthia, alerted by a loyalist, drove by but didn't stop, her glare visible through tinted windows. As the sun set, Tom dismantled the treehouse piece by piece, Ethan watching from the porch with a heavy heart. But Tom had a plan, and this was only the beginning. The materials were stored in his garage, ready for a rebuild that would turn the tables on Cynthia and spark a neighborhood revolution. The dismantling of Ethan's treehouse left a void in the backyard of Tom's Maple Grove home, the oak tree standing stark and bare against the morning sky. Ethan, still unaware of the full scope of the OA's demands, asked daily when his treehouse would return, his small voice tinged with hope. Tom reassured him with vague promises, shielding him from the bureaucratic battle brewing beyond the fence. The garage, now a workshop of rebellion, brimmed with cedar planks, paint cans, and blueprints for a new treehouse, one that would comply with every HOA rule while making a spectacle too bold to ignore. Tom's evenings were spent sanding wood and sketching designs, his mind fueled by a mix of protectiveness for his son and a growing resolve to challenge Cynthia's iron-fisted control over the neighborhood. The posters Tom had printed became the talk of Maple Grove. Plastered on community boards and slipped into mailboxes, they featured Ethan's treehouse with bold text decrying the HOA's overreach. Neighbors shared them in the community Facebook group, sparking heated debates. Some defended Cynthia, arguing that rules ensured uniformity, but most expressed frustration, sharing stories of their own fines for trivial infractions, like a pergola deemed too rustic, or a flower bed with unapproved colors. The petition Tom had circulated at the farewell gathering gained traction, with signatures climbing past 50 by week's end. Each name was a small act of defiance, a crack in the HOA's facade of unchallenged authority. Tom scanned the petition sheets, uploading them to a new website he'd built, Maple Grove Freedom. A simple platform hosting the petition and photos of the treehouse alongside a call for reform. Cynthia, meanwhile, was not idle. Her daily patrols intensified, her SUV creeping past Tom's house as she jotted notes on her ever-present clipboard. She fired off an email to the HOA board, labeling the posters inflammatory and demanding action against Tom for violating a vague bylaw about disruptive signage. A second notice arrived at Tom's door, this time citing the posters and threatening a $50 fine per day unless they were removed. The letter's tone dripped with condescension, accusing Tom of undermining the community's harmony. Rather than comply, Tom saw an opportunity. He replaced the posters with a massive banner stretched across his front fence, reading, "Support our kids' treehouse, sign the petition." A QR code linked to his website, ensuring anyone with a smartphone could join the cause. The banner was technically compliant, placed on his property and within size limits, leaving Cynthia powerless to act immediately. The neighborhood buzzed with newfound energy. Residents who had once avoided confrontation began stopping by Tom's house, adding their names to the petition and sharing stories of Cynthia's overzealous enforcement. One neighbor, a retiree named Linda, recounted how Cynthia had fined her for a birdhouse painted in, non-neutral, blue despite it being hidden in her backyard. Another, a young couple, shared a citation for leaving a tricycle on their driveway overnight. The stories fueled Tom's resolve, confirming that his fight was bigger than one treehouse. It was about reclaiming the neighborhood spirit. He organized a second gathering, this time a planning party, in his backyard, where neighbors brainstormed ways to pressure the OA. Kids played tag around the oak, their laughter a reminder of what was at stake. Tom's new treehouse design took shape in the garage, a masterpiece of compliance and creativity. It would be larger than the original, with a slide, a climbing wall, and a crow's nest, all built to meet the HOA's height, material, and placement rules. He sourced eco-friendly paint in approved shades, ensuring no technicality could be challenged. To amplify the impact, he planned a public rebuild, inviting neighbors to witness the construction as a statement of unity. He ordered custom signs for the event, reading, "Kids deserve plate reform the how!" The signs would line his yard, each stake a testament to the growing support. Cynthia countered with a community email, warning of disorderly conduct and hinting at legal action against petition organizers. Her words, meant to intimidate, instead galvanized the resistance. The Facebook group exploded with comments, many mocking her heavy-handed tactics. A local news blog picked up the story, dubbing it Treehouse Tussle in Maple Grove, with photos of Tom's banner and the petition table. Shares multiplied, drawing attention from nearby towns. Tom's website traffic spiked, with visitors leaving messages of solidarity and even small donations to cover materials for the rebuild. As the 10-day deadline passed, Cynthia escalated her campaign. She called an emergency HOA meeting, scheduling it just before Tom's planned rebuild. Her agenda: propose stricter fines for non-compliant gatherings, and rally her dwindling allies to quash the petition. Tom, tipped off by a sympathetic board member, prepared to attend, armed with printouts of the petition and a timeline of Cynthia's overreaches. He also uncovered a lead, a rumor that Cynthia had bypassed approval for her own backyard pergola years ago, a violation buried in old records. If true, it could expose her hypocrisy and sway the board. The rebuild day loomed, with materials ready and neighbors RSVP'd. Tom worked late, assembling panels under the garage's fluorescent lights, Ethan occasionally peeking in, his excitement growing. The neighborhood hummed with anticipation, the oak tree waiting to reclaim its crown. But Cynthia's meeting promised a showdown, her last chance to crush the rebellion before Tom's treehouse rose again. The Maple Grove Community Center buzzed with an electric undercurrent as residents streamed in for the emergency HOA meeting, the air thick with anticipation. Folding tables lined the walls, covered with Tom's petition sheets and printouts from Maple Grove Freedom. Calm, each page a testament to the growing rebellion against Cynthia's reign. The room, usually a sterile space for routine agendas, felt like a courtroom, with neighbors taking sides in hushed whispers. Tom arrived early, his folder of evidence tucked under his arm, including old HOA records hinting at Cynthia's unapproved pergola, a potential bombshell he planned to deploy strategically. Ethan stayed home with a babysitter, spared the drama but eager for news of his treehouse's fate. Outside, Tom's banner still stretched across his fence, its bold letters and QR code drawing curious glances from passersby, amplifying the cause online. Cynthia presided at the front, her posture rigid, her clipboard a shield against the sea of skeptical faces. The agenda focused on her proposed fines for disruptive gatherings, a clear jab at Tom's planning party and upcoming rebuild. She opened with a rehearsed speech, painting herself as the guardian of Maple Grove's pristine image, warning that unchecked defiance, like Tom's petition, threatened property values and community cohesion. Her voice carried a practiced calm, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as the crowd shifted, some rolling their eyes, others typing furiously on their phones to update the Facebook group. The petition had surpassed 100 signatures, enough to force a vote on bylaw changes if presented formally, and Cynthia knew it. When public comments opened, Tom stood, his presence commanding attention despite his quiet demeanor. He distributed copies of his timeline, detailing Cynthia's selective enforcement fines for minor infractions while her own pergola, installed without approval in 2019, went unpunished. Murmurs rippled through the room as neighbors scanned the evidence, some nodding in recognition, others whispering about their own grievances. Linda, the retiree fined for her blue birdhouse, followed, reading from a prepared statement about the OA's chilling effect on community spirit. A young father spoke next, recounting how Cynthia had threatened to tow his car for parking slightly off-center. The stories piled up, each a brick in the wall of dissent, until Cynthia's attempts to redirect the discussion faltered, her clipboard trembling slightly. Tom saved his pergola revelation for the end. He projected a scanned permit application, publicly available but buried in city archives, showing Cynthia's pergola lacked HOA approval, despite her claiming otherwise in old emails. The crowd gasped, phones flashing as they captured the slide. Cynthia's face reddened, her defense a stammered claim of clerical error, but the damage was done. The board, sensing the shift, postponed her fine proposal, promising to review the petition's demands. As the meeting adjourned, neighbors clustered around Tom, offering handshakes and new signatures. The Facebook group exploded with posts, photos of the pergola evidence going viral, tagged Fit Treehouse Tussle. A local news van parked outside, filming a segment that would air that evening, framing Tom as a dad fighting for his son's joy. The rebuild rally was set for the next morning, and Tom spent the night assembling the treehouse's frame in his garage. The new design was a marvel, a multi-level structure with a slide, climbing wall, and a crow's nest, all within HOA height limits and painted in approved earthy tones. He had enlisted a few neighbors to help, turning the rebuild into a community event. By dawn, his backyard was a hive of activity, with volunteers hauling planks and hammering nails under the oak's canopy. Kids watched from the sidelines, Ethan among them, his eyes wide with excitement as the structure took shape. Signs lined the yard. Kids deserve play? And reform the HOA, while a neighbor's drone buzzed overhead, capturing footage for the website. The community showed up in force, bringing coffee and donuts, their presence a silent rebuke to Cynthia's rules. Cynthia drove by mid-morning, her SUV slowing to a crawl as she surveyed the scene. She didn't stop, but her glare was palpable, her clipboard absent for once. She had posted a defensive update in the Facebook group, claiming the pergola issue was resolved years ago, but comments tore into her, citing the timeline and demanding accountability. Her allies dwindled, some attending the rebuild to avoid being ostracized. The treehouse rose swiftly, its slide gleaming in the sunlight, a symbol of defiance and community. By afternoon, it was nearly complete, with Ethan testing the rope ladder under Tom's watchful eye. The drone footage, uploaded to YouTube, racked up thousands of views, drawing comments from across the country praising the effort. But Cynthia wasn't finished. Late that day, a new notice arrived, accusing Tom of violating noise ordinances during the rebuild and threatening a $200 fine. It was a desperate move, easily disproven by city regulations allowing daytime construction, but it signaled her intent to fight dirty. Tom, undeterred, shared the notice online, framing it as further proof of her vendetta. The petition neared critical mass, enough to force a special election, and whispers of an HOA audit began to circulate, targeting Cynthia's financial oversight. As the treehouse stood tall, Tom prepared for the final push, a showdown that would expose her deepest secrets and secure Ethan's haven for good. The new treehouse stood proudly in Tom's backyard, its cedar walls gleaming under the Maple Grove sun, a testament to community defiance. Ethan scrambled up the climbing wall, his laughter echoing as he slid down the shiny new slide, oblivious to the storm still brewing around his father's fight with the HOA. Neighbors lingered after the rebuild rally, snapping photos of the structure, complete with its crow's nest and rope ladder, and sharing them on social media with hashtags like #TreehouseTriumph. The footage from the drone, now circulating on YouTube, had drawn thousands of views overnight, with comments praising Tom's ingenuity and condemning the HOA's overreach. Maple Grove freedom. Calm surged in traffic. The petition nearing 200 signatures, enough to force a special election to challenge Cynthia's leadership. But Tom knew the battle wasn't over. Cynthia's latest notice, citing noise violations, signaled her desperation, and he sensed an opportunity to dig deeper into her reign of control. The noise violation notice, flimsy as it was, sparked outrage in the community Facebook group. Residents posted screenshots of city ordinances proving daytime construction was legal, and mocked Cynthia's attempt to stretch the rules. Tom uploaded the notice to his website, framing it as another example of her vindictive tactics. The backlash grew, with neighbors sharing their own stories of baseless fines, a $100 penalty for a cluttered porch that was just a potted plant, or a warning for a doghouse deemed unarchitectural. The stories fueled Tom's resolve, and a tip from Linda, the retiree, pointed him to a new lead. Rumors of financial irregularities in the HOA's budget. Linda recalled seeing Cynthia approve questionable landscaping contracts always awarded to the same company, raising suspicions of favoritism or worse. Tom enlisted a neighbor, Mark, a part-time accountant with a knack for digging through records. Together, they requested HOA financial statements, leveraging a bylaw that granted residents access to such documents. What they found was a trail of inconsistencies, inflated invoices for lawn maintenance, payments to a contractor linked to Cynthia's cousin, and vague, consulting fees, with no clear recipient. The discoveries were gold, but they needed verification. Tom and Mark spent late nights cross-referencing public records and old emails, piecing together evidence of potential embezzlement. They compiled their findings into a concise report, complete with scanned receipts and bank transfers, and uploaded it to the website with a bold headline, "Who's really profiting from our HOA dues?" The report sent shockwaves through Maple Grove. The Facebook group exploded with reactions, residents demanding an official audit. A local news outlet, already hooked on the Treehouse story, ran a follow-up piece featuring interviews with neighbors and a clip of the new treehouse. The segment, titled Maple Grove's Treehouse Rebellion, went viral, shared across platforms with thousands of likes. Commenters from other suburbs chimed in, sharing their own HOA horror stories, turning Tom's fight into a national conversation about community governance. The petition signatures soared, bolstered by outsiders inspired to support the cause. A few offered donations, which Tom redirected to cover audit costs and materials for a community board at the Treehouse, where kids could post drawings and ideas. Cynthia, cornered by the mounting evidence, doubled down. She sent a community-wide email dismissing the financial allegations as baseless attacks and announcing a clarification meeting to address concerns. But her credibility was crumbling. Even her loyalists hesitated, wary of being tied to a potential scandal. She avoided public appearances, her SUV no longer patrolling daily, her curtains drawn tight. Neighbors noticed, their confidence growing as they planned a rally at the clarification meeting, intending to present the petition and demand an independent audit. Tom designed new signs for the event, reading, "Transparency Now," and "Kids Over Cash." He also added a feature to the Treehouse, a chalkboard wall for community messages, quickly filled with notes of support and doodles from Ethan and his friends. The rally took shape outside the community center, with dozens of residents holding signs and chanting for reform. Kids carried balloons, turning the protest into a festive yet pointed statement. The Treehouse, now a neighborhood landmark, featured in every photo, its slide and crow's nest a symbol of what was possible when a community united. Cynthia arrived at the meeting flanked by two board members, her face pale but defiant. The room filled beyond capacity, standing room only, as Tom and Mark presented their financial findings. Gasps met each slide, the evidence undeniable. The board, under pressure, agreed to hire an external auditor, a move that drew cheers from the crowd. As the meeting ended, Cynthia's grip on power weakened further. The viral surge continued, with a popular podcast inviting Tom to share the story, dubbing it The Great Treehouse Takeover. Social media amplified the cause, with influencers creating memes of Cynthia as a cartoon villain, clipboard in hand. But Tom knew the audit results would be the true test. Proof of her misconduct could end her tenure for good. As the auditor began work, he prepared for the special election, readying one final surprise to ensure the Treehouse stood forever and Cynthia's reign ended in disgrace. The Maple Grove neighborhood thrummed with a restless energy as the external auditor's investigation into the HOA's finances began, casting a spotlight on Cynthia's long unquestioned authority. The Treehouse in Tom's backyard stood as a beacon of resistance, its chalkboard wall now covered in colorful messages from kids and adults alike, proclaiming freedom for fun and no more fines. Ethan spent hours there, sketching pirates and dragons, unaware of the high stakes his father's battle had reached. Tom, meanwhile, balanced his hardware store shifts with late-night strategy sessions, poring over the petition's progress and preparing for the special election that loomed just days away. Maple Grove Freedom. Com had become a rallying point, its visitor count climbing into the tens of thousands, fueled by viral videos and news segments that painted the Treehouse saga as a suburban uprising against petty tyranny. The auditor's preliminary findings, shared with the HOA board in a tense closed-door session, confirmed Tom and Mark's suspicions. The landscaping contracts, awarded to a company tied to Cynthia's cousin, showed inflated costs with thousands of dollars funneled into vague maintenance fees. Small but consistent payments labeled as consulting, traced back to an account Cynthia controlled, suggesting personal enrichment. The evidence, though not yet public, leaked to the community through a board member uneasy with Cynthia's leadership. Tom uploaded a redacted summary to his website, careful to avoid legal pitfalls, with a headline reading, HOA funds misuse demand accountability. The Facebook group ignited, residents sharing the post alongside memes of Cynthia's clipboard morphing into a money-grabbing claw. The story broke out of Maple Grove, picked up by a national news outlet that ran a feature titled, Treehouse Dad Exposes HOA Scandal, complete with drone shots of the Treehouse and clips from the Rebuild rally. Cynthia's response was frantic. She issued a community email, claiming the audit was incomplete and accusing Tom of orchestrating a smear campaign. Her words rang hollow, as neighbors recalled her dismissive attitude toward their complaints over the years. Her patrols ceased entirely, her SUV parked in her driveway, windows dark. The board, under pressure from the petition's now 250 signatures, announced the special election would include a vote to remove Cynthia as compliance officer. Residents rallied, organizing carpools to ensure turnout, while Tom printed new signs for the election day. "Vote for fairness, save our treehouse!" He also added a community suggestion box to the treehouse, inviting ideas for new HOA rules, which filled with notes about allowing creative structures and relaxing color restrictions. The neighborhood's unity grew stronger, with block parties becoming weekly events. Families gathered under the oak, kids sliding down the treehouse's slide while adults swapped stories of Cynthia's overreach. Linda, the retiree, took charge of a flyer campaign, distributing updates on the audit and election details. Mark, the accountant, prepared a presentation for the election meeting, summarizing the financial irregularities in clear charts. The community's enthusiasm spilled online, with Faye Treehouse Triumph trending locally and influencers from nearby towns visiting to film the treehouse, boosting its fame. A viral TikTok showed Ethan waving from the crow's nest, captioned, "This kid's treehouse beat the O." The views climbed into the millions, drawing donations that Tom used to fund a scholarship for local kids' art programs, tying the treehouse to a broader cause. Cynthia, cornered, tried a last-ditch defense. She hired a lawyer to send Tom a cease and desist letter, accusing him of defamation over the website's financial claims. Tom, with help from a pro bono attorney neighbor, responded swiftly, citing public records and free speech protections. The letter backfired, shared online as evidence of Cynthia's desperation, further eroding her support. Even her staunchest allies began attending community events, some signing the petition under peer pressure. The auditor's final report, due just before the election, promised to be damning with whispers of potential legal consequences for Cynthia. Election day arrived with a festive air. The community center overflowed, residents clutching coffee and signs, kids wearing "Treehouse Team" stickers Tom had printed. The treehouse stood as a silent witness, its slide gleaming in the morning light as neighbors passed by, snapping photos. Tom set up a live stream on his website, broadcasting the meeting to those unable to attend, ensuring transparency. The board, visibly nervous, opened the floor for comments, and residents lined up, their voices steady as they recounted years of unfair fines and ignored concerns. Mark's financial presentation sealed the deal, its charts drawing gasps as the extent of the misuse became clear. As ballots were distributed, Cynthia sat in the front row, her face a mask of defiance, but her hands trembled. The vote would decide not only her fate but the future of the OA's rules. Tom, standing at the back, felt the weight of the moment but also a surge of hope. He had one final move planned, a surprise that would cement the treehouse's legacy and ensure Cynthia's tactics could never resurface. The Maple Grove Community Center pulsed with anticipation as the special election reached its climax, the air thick with the scent of coffee and the rustle of ballots. Residents filled every seat, their faces a mix of resolve and excitement, while Tom stood quietly at the back, his eyes scanning the room. The treehouse, now a neighborhood icon, loomed large in everyone's minds, its slide and crow's nest a symbol of what could be achieved when a community united. Ethan, at home with a neighbor, had decorated the treehouse's chalkboard wall with a new drawing of a superhero soaring above the oak, unaware that his father's fight was about to reshape Maple Grove. The petition, now boasting over 300 signatures, lay on a table, its weight undeniable. The auditor's final report, released just hours before, had confirmed Cynthia's financial misconduct, detailing thousands in misallocated funds, and whispers of legal action hung over her like a storm cloud. The meeting began with a tense formality. The board, visibly rattled by the audit's findings, opened with a brief acknowledgement of the report, promising cooperation with any investigations. Cynthia sat in the front row, her usual poise replaced by a strained silence, her clipboard nowhere in sight. Residents took the floor, their comments a cascade of grievances, fines for harmless decorations, ignored maintenance requests, and now proof of financial betrayal. Linda presented the petition, her voice steady as she demanded new leadership and revised bylaws to prioritize fairness. Mark followed, projecting charts of the audit's findings, each slide met with gasps and nods. The evidence was irrefutable. Cynthia had funneled HOA dues to her cousin's company and pocketed consulting fees for herself. Tom saved his final surprise for the end. As the comment period closed, he stepped forward, unveiling a proposal he drafted with the pro bono attorney. It called for a complete overhaul of the HOA's structure, term limits for board members, mandatory transparency in budgeting, and a resident-led committee to approve new rules. But the centerpiece was a community creativity clause. allowing structures like treehouses and garden art with majority resident approval, ensuring no single officer could wield unchecked power. He projected a mock-up of the clause, featuring a photo of Ethan's treehouse with the caption, "Built by us, for us." The room erupted in applause, phones flashing as the image spread online, for Treehouse triumph trending nationally. Voting began amidst the fervor, ballots passed out with a sense of purpose. Cynthia's allies, now a dwindling few, cast their votes quietly while the majority scribbled with conviction. The count, overseen by neutral volunteers, was swift and decisive. Cynthia was ousted as compliance officer by a landslide, replaced by Linda, whose fairness had earned her trust. 2 other board members stepped down, their seats filled by petition supporters, including Mark. The creativity clause passed overwhelmingly, cementing the treehouse's legality and opening the door for more expressive additions across Maple Grove. Cheers echoed as the results were announced, the community center shaking with a joy that hadn't been felt in years. Cynthia left the meeting without a word, her SUV speeding out of the parking lot. Rumors swirled that she was selling her home, unwilling to face the neighborhood she'd once controlled. The audit's fallout led to a formal investigation, with whispers of restitution and potential charges. Maple Grove transformed in the aftermath, the new board revising bylaws to reflect the community's wishes. Treehouses, birdhouses, and colorful fences sprouted across yards, each a small rebellion against the old regime. The community board on Tom's treehouse filled with ideas. Bike racks, a community garden, even a mural project, turning the oak into a hub of creativity. The Treehouse saga became a legend, its story spreading far beyond Maple Grove. A documentary crew reached out, filming a short feature that aired on a streaming platform, showcasing the treehouse and interviews with residents. Tom's website evolved into a national resource, offering guides for HOA reform and templates for petitions. Donations funded a playground upgrade near the community center, with Ethan cutting the ribbon, his grin wide as he slid down his treehouse slide for the cameras. Social media continued to celebrate, with memes of the treehouse as a superhero fortress, Cynthia's clipboard a vanquished foe. Tom returned to his routine, his carpentry tools now crafting furniture for neighbors, his bond with Ethan stronger than ever. The treehouse stood tall, its crow's nest a lookout for kids dreaming big. Block parties flourished, fairy lights twinkling without fear of fines, and Maple Grove became a model for communities nationwide. As spring bloomed, the oak's leaves framed the treehouse in green, a living monument to a father's love and a neighborhood's fight. The battle was over, but its legacy endured, proving that one treehouse could topple tyranny and build a brighter future.